Hello, everyone. Welcome back to HTV. This is Rabbi Ephy Greene with The Hidden Meaning. This week, we're going to be talking about the mitzvah of tefillin. Tefillin, also known as phylacteries. Maybe not really known as phylacteries. Who knows? Who uses that word, phylacteries? Nobody knows what that is. People know what tefillin is. Tefillins are those black boxes with the black straps that the Jews wear when they pray, right? At least some people know about them. There's a story a few years back about 14-year-old kid who was traveling on a plane to go visit his grandparents, I think, and he was flying out very early in the morning, and he had to pray. So what did he do? He took out his tefillin bag and he wrapped them, and the stewardess, who had never seen this thing before, looks at this kid with boxes and straps around him, and she thought he had a bomb. And they landed the plane, an emergency landing, and police came and arrested him. Ooh, wow, was it a scandal? But that shows us why it's really crucial to know your tefillin, to know what it's about. So we're going to talk about what tefillin are and some of the deeper methodology and meaning behind what this is all about. After all, this is the hidden meaning. Okay, I'm wondering how many of you out there listening to this class have tefillin in your family or have seen it passed down, know your grandfather used to wear it maybe, or maybe some of you even put it on every day. So a Jewish male puts on tefillin every day except for a Shabbos or a holiday. And there are two parts to it. There's the tefillin of the head and the tefillin of the arm. And the Torah tells us in the Shema paragraph that we should bind the tefillin to our arm, which is done on the bicep, and between your eyes, which is not actually right between your eyes, but really on the head by the hairline, right between the eyes. Okay? The inside of the tefillin is actually the paragraphs of the Shema itself. I'm going to share this with you. Oh, for some reason I got muted. I think I'm back. Okay. In each of the head tefillin, there's 4 compartments with 4 sections of the Torah, which we're going to look at in a second. And in the arm tefillin, there's actually only 1 compartment with all 4 sections written on 1 long scroll. They are rolled up and placed inside. And in this way, a Jew is actually carrying the Torah with him. Very fundamental parts of the Torah we'll see in a few minutes. The most famous one is the Shema, which we have over here, the portion of the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And the tefillin really testify to the oneness of God, and they also include, the other major theme is the Exodus of Egypt. This is the idea that, when God took us out of Egypt, he declared himself as our God, that he was taking special care of the Jewish people. And we wear the tefillin as kind of a testimony to that, that we remember that God took us out of Egypt and that we have this special relationship with him. And it's a testimony to our loyalty to him as well. Okay. The 4 portions, the 4 sections of the Torah that are written are as follows. The first one comes from Exodus chapter 13. And it talks about firstborns and the holiness of a firstborn son, a firstborn animal, and all how that is a remembrance of the Exodus from Egypt. The second paragraph also somewhat refers to that. This is the idea that a firstborn has a special holiness. What is that about? It's about representing a certain amount of belonging to God, right? When a person is born into a role that they have, or a certain person is born into a position, so that's it. There's nothing to talk about, right? If you're born into the royal family in England, with everything that means, you are in a position. There's nothing to do about that, pretty much. If you're born into, I don't know, to become, um, born to the children of millionaires, billionaires, so, your life is a certain way. So obviously a person can change that, but the idea over here is that we are born into a nation that God took out of Egypt, and therefore, he kind of claimed us, in a certain sense, and certainly by claiming his commitment to us, and therefore it represents this idea of belonging to God. The second paragraph also comes from chapter 13 in Exodus. It's actually the next paragraph, which refers to being dependent on God. The idea that God not only took us out of Egypt, but then supported us in the desert. He also brought us to the Holy Land, the promised land of Israel. He gave us the Torah in Sinai, protected us for 40 years in the desert. We are dependent on God. He protects us. He looks after us. And that ultimately leads us to the third section, which is the Shema Yisrael, the hero is the Lord our God, Lord is one paragraph, which reminds us that the Lord is one doesn't just mean that there's one God, not two, not 17. It means that God is the one unity of the entire universe. That means that he is everything. He is the be all and end all of everything. So, every molecule and every single piece of matter that exists in this universe is infused with God's presence. And that is the oneness of God. And when we realize that, we recognize that, so then we realize, okay, God is here, he's there, he's everywhere. And therefore I'm also a part of God, and therefore I'm subject to this greater power. That's the idea of accepting God's authority. But rather than God's authority being the kind of authority like looking down on us, or just bossing us around, but rather God's commandments are there in order to provide us opportunities. And that is what the fourth paragraph tells us about in terms of the idea of reward and punishment. That God is there to give us opportunities to come close to him, to achieve holiness and refinement, purity and pleasantness, in this world, not only for ourselves on a personal level, but for a whole society. The commandments of the Torah represent not just personal holiness, but also about societal responsibility, the concept of paying for damages, the concept of returning lost objects, visiting the sick, giving charity. These are all commandments in the Bible. So God says, you want to take advantage, so great, I'm going to give you a reward. You're going to have a good year, good life in this world, and you're going to have a reward in the next world as well. And that's what the fourth paragraph talks about, that if you do good deeds, so then God will make life smoother for you in order to continue doing those good deeds. Now, and what this does is by taking these four paragraphs representing this idea of belonging, that we belong to God, that we're dependent on God, we accept God's authority, and that there's going to be reward and punishment for what we do, it kind of goes through a process of taking things from like a mental recognition to a physical subjugation. And again, that subjugation isn't disempowering, but it's actually empowering, because ultimately God leaves it up to us. He gives us a choice. Are you going to choose to do these commandments or not? And that is what is so empowering about wearing the tefillin, because you're taking this message of God saying, you're mine. I took you out of Egypt. You were a slave people, and I've now freed you, emancipated you, and so therefore we belong to God. But yet God says, and I'm going to make your life better. I'm going to make your life very, very good, so long as you choose to follow the rules by which I've set up as to how a good life is lived. So don't be selfish, don't be shallow, but rather, do all the commandments which have good messages to them. And this ultimately brings us to the next idea that I want to share, which is, isn't that guy cute? That is my son, actually. Who just started putting on tefillin this past week. And so the next idea that I want to share is is how the tefillin look on the body, which is that the tefillin sit on the head, again above the forehead by the frontal lobe. They are wrapped around to the back of the head, and bound tightly to the head, with the straps hanging down below. all the way to the navel area, crossing with the arm over here, where the hand tefillin gets covered over on the bicep, and then is wrapped around the arm as well. So this idea represents the head, or the mental realization of everything that God has done for us, and taking that from a theoretical philosophy and translating it from mentality into physicality, bringing it out to the body. It goes from the brain to the body. It's carried out by the arms, carried out by the legs, etc. And the idea is that, Judaism is a religion that's not just about theology and philosophy, and it's esoteric and it's not connected to this world. But no, it's supposed to be translated into the here and now, into the physical actions. And that's why, like we said, that there are laws governing in the Torah, laws like about returning lost objects, or paying damages that you may have caused even inadvertently. Laws about things like keeping the Sabbath or keeping kosher, which seems to be purely about God, are also related to physical manifestations in this world. Fine. So this is the idea that the philosophy, in a certain sense, that the tefillin represent, what's inside of the tefillin, the portions of the Torah which represent orienting ourselves again as belonging to God, staying loyal to God, living according to God's authority, and choosing to follow the mitzvah in order to achieve a better world for ourselves. This is all translated into action through the tefillin being attached to the arm as well. Now, originally the tefillin were worn all day. All day. Could you imagine? All day. But it was found that because of the laws of the tefillin that require a person to be very focused, thinking about what they represent, thinking about the messages inside of them, it was found to be at a certain level too difficult for everybody to maintain on a daily basis. You see, we're not quite as holy as the generations before us, and so therefore, for a person to wear tefillin while they're involved in mundane activities is not really appropriate. It has God's name, as we'll see soon, in the tefillin, on the tefillin, and therefore it really represents having, in a certain sense, God's name upon us, which is one of the explanations behind the mitzvah. It's explained that the tefillin, together with the tzitzis, the four-cornered garment or a talus, is kind of like a uniform of a Jew. This is the way that it's shared in what's called the Sefer HaChinuch, which is the book of commandments, going through the 613 commandments. And you see over here some of the soldiers, right, putting on tefillin themselves. Now, when you look at them, you see the soldiers, and you understand, okay, that's an Israeli soldier, right? That's it. He belongs to the Israeli army. If you were to see somebody in the uniform of a different army, so then okay, he belongs to that army, right? So then you see this boy over here, and this boy is being inaugurated into the army of God as well, right? He's got tefillin on his head. They're hanging down. They're on his arm. He's got the talit that's being wrapped around him, right? He has a kippah, so his father here has a kippah. And what is that? This is the uniform of the Jew. This is the prayer uniform, right? The idea is, says the Sefer Chinuch, because every single person who's not in uniform has certain powers, has certain talents, has certain abilities, certain perspectives and skills. And that person, however, is undefined so long as he doesn't have a uniform on. But once he has a uniform on, so then you know what is the point, or you know where is directed all of those talents, skills, and perspectives and abilities. And that's precisely what happens with the Jew. When a Jew is wearing his uniform, he is wearing his tefillin, and he's wearing his talit. So this uniform helps associate not only others, but he himself towards what his mission is in life. You see, says the Sefer HaChinuch, the book of the commandments, it's so easy for us to get caught up in this physical world, and so often we think to ourselves, I am who I appear to be in the mirror, right? I look at myself, I wake up in the morning, I do my hair, I, whatever, I put in my glasses, my lenses, whatever it is. I take a shower, I get dressed in my outfit, I go to my job, I drive my car, I have my social life, friends, and that is who I am, and that's what I'm all about. However, says the Sefer Chinuch, that is a mistake, because you have to understand that what you see on the outside is purely your externals. Really, what makes you who you are is your internal, is your soul, your mind, your soul. Your body is simply the shell that holds that. And so therefore, when a person starts to associate too much with the body, with the physical life, they could be drawn away from a spiritual life. They could be drawn away from that which is holy, that which is pure, that which is godlike. And that's ultimately the biggest misdirection that a person could face in this world, because God gave us a soul, which is a piece of God himself, in order to be more like God, in order to bring holiness into this physical world. And so that's why he says the body needs these physical experiences, these physical reminders, the uniform, in order to associate itself and direct itself, focus itself on what its true mission is. And that's why wearing a tefillin every day, and certainly in the old days when it was all day long, was all about creating a mentality of engaging in the physical world purely in a holy sense, in a moral sense, and not to simply follow one's whims and desires. Okay. The sources of the laws of the Tefillin are very much based and related to the oral law. We know that when Moses got the Torah on Mount Sinai, so God dictated to him what to write down in the Torah, and he wrote the 5 books of Moses. Now, he didn't write them all at the same time because some things hadn't happened yet, but he wrote everything that happened up until that time, according to God's prophecy that he gave him, how to write it in. Later on, he had other prophecies to tell us to write the rest of the Torah. So, but that was only the written Torah. God also gave Moses an oral law. That oral law complements and explains a lot of what the written law seems to leave as a little bit vague. Or there are general principles that are mentioned, but certain more precise applications need to be spelled out by the oral law. All of that is related to what we call today the Talmud. The Talmud is a collection of the discussions and the applications of the oral law. Now, the laws of the Tefillin are not mentioned in the Bible. They are related through the oral law. Why is that? What is there? There seems to be this special connection between the Tefillin and Torah. There is there is actually one of the verses that it says in the first portion of the Tefillin. It tells us that that one of the components of the Tefillin is L'mantia Torah Hashem b'ficha, in order that the Torah of God should be in your mouth, because with an outstretched hand, God took you out of Egypt. The notion of having the Torah in one's mouth as a result of wearing Tefillin seems strange, right? It's not even near our mouth. It's on the head. It's on our arms. What does that mean? So that the Torah is in your mouth. How does that represent Torah in one's mouth? So let's go into this a little bit. There is a fascinating Talmud in tractate Rosh Hashanah that tells us, just like on Rosh Hashanah, in the beginning of the first year, man is judged. So it tells us in that section that there are certain types of sinners, different types of sinners amongst the Jewish people. One of those types of sinners is, it says, somebody who sins with their body. What does it mean, somebody who sins with their body? Says the Talmud that it refers to a skull that has not worn tefillin. Now, this only refers to somebody who is obligated to wear the tefillin. Women are not obligated to wear the tefillin. Non-Jews are not obligated to wear the tefillin. And there are certain situations where a person is incapable of wearing tefillin, such as if he's not able to maintain a clean body, such as he may have some sort of physical disability, and those situations would exempt him, and therefore he would not be liable for that. However, somebody who is responsible to, and capable to wear the tefillin and does not, that is considered a pretty serious sin. However, one of the commentators explains that that only applies to somebody who is not learning Torah. Somebody who learns the Torah, however, is not held liable for being somebody who does not wear tefillin. Why is that? What is this connection? Right? We see here in these pictures, we see people who are learning Torah, and what is it about the Torah that seems to kind of compensate for the mitzvah of tefillin? So there's a beautiful midrash commentary in Tehillim, in Psalms, which tells us that the Jewish people once said to God, God, we want to learn Torah day and night, but we simply don't have time. We have to work. We have to take care of our families, right? Learning Torah is a beautiful vocation, but it's not so easy for everybody to be doing it all day. So God answered them, don't worry, wear tefillin, and I will consider it as though you were learning the entire day. That's a pretty incredible description of the power of tefillin. It is as though you're learning Torah the entire day. Somehow, tefillin literally fulfill the verse that Torah will be in your mouth. But how does this work? So Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who was leader of the Frankfurt Jewish community in Germany in the late 1800s, he explains that the placement of the tefillin is really quite unique. Although the Torah seems to instruct placing them between the eyes, which would seem to be the forehead, and on your hand, which would seem to be the lower arm, as we said, that is not the practice. Rather, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, teaches us that the head tefillin goes on the frontal lobe by the hairline, and on the hand by the lower bicep. Hirsch suggests that these placements are because these are the control centers of the body. Indeed, the arm cannot lift without the muscle of the lower bicep. And many things that we do that control human behavior are controlled by the frontal lobe of the brain. Based on Hirsch's explanation, so maybe now we can understand the Torah tefillin connection. Tefillin are meant to be a reminder of our spiritual orientation and our drives, and they are placed on the control centers of our body, of our head and our hand. And just like Torah is almost a constant mitzvah, we're constantly supposed to be learning, enhancing our wisdom, understanding God, and that's a command unto itself. The tefillin represent our control centers being governed by the word of God. And there's particular evidence of this idea, as we said, with the idea of the straps hanging down over the course of the entire body. There is also this idea is represented by the concept of having a clean body. A person has to make sure that he doesn't pass wind while he's wearing tefillin. He has to make sure that he is thinking proper thoughts. That type of self-discipline, both on a physical and a mental level, indicate that a person wearing tefillin is in control for the sake of God. His body, his physical and mental existence are under control for the sake of God. And that is precisely what learning Torah is supposed to do for us. So this is a beautiful idea representing the idea of Torah and tefillin connecting to one another, but it goes one step further. Because how does a person put on the tefillin? Well, number one, he puts on the hand tefillin, and afterwards he puts on the head tefillin. Why is that? Well, the verse says you should bind them on your arms and then make them a sign between your eyes. So that's the order of the verse as to how it says it. However, it goes a step further than that, because we know that when God gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai, that gift that God gave us was greeted by a declaration by the Jewish people of Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. Which means what? That the Jewish people were putting their action, the commitment to action, before their understanding, before their learning. They said, Na'aseh, we will do it, we're going to keep the Torah, we're going to fulfill its laws, v'nishma, and we'll also learn it, we're also going to study. And that is represented by the tefillin as well. The tefillin, when we put it on our arms, we are saying we are going to control our actions. Our hands are going to only engage in this world in a way which is proper and fits according to a hand that wears tefillin. We're not going to steal. We are not going to take things that aren't ours. We're not going to damage. We are not going to grasp things that we shouldn't be grasping. And the same thing with our head. Then we put it on our head and we say, and our mentality is also subjugated. We commit our actions, and our mentality is going to follow as well. And this is the idea of the Na'aseh v'nishma, and one of the parallels that we can see between the idea of the concept of tefillin and Torah. The wisdom of the Torah being manifest in the great overall ensconcing of the human body with the tefillin. Even though we don't wear the tefillin all day anymore, nevertheless, their lesson can stand strong for us, stand firm for us, and it's a lesson for all time. That if we control and discipline and focus our bodies and our drives and our whims towards God, towards spirituality, then you know what? Then we are truly emulating God and fulfilling our mission of being a soul within a body that raises the body up to a more exalted level. I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of days when we do the Tefillin part 2. There are some more fascinating, beautiful ideas that I look forward to sharing with you. Have a wonderful day. Please make some comments if you like on the Facebook page. We look forward to seeing you again.